The walls of the execution chamber hummed with a faint, almost musical vibration, the kind that made the hairs on your arms stand on end if you weren't used to the hum of alien energy fields. Corporal Adrian Voss stepped inside, expecting the usual routine. A procedural inspection, a couple of sleepy guards, maybe a malfunctioning laser lock or two. Instead, he found her standing tall despite the chains that threatened to hold her. She looked almost human, except for the long, elegant ears that swept back from her head, catching the cold light of the chamber and giving her a feline grace that was almost mesmerizing. Her eyes, a deep amber that seemed to glow faintly in the dim energy light, met his with a mixture of defiance and exhaustion, and Adrian had the uncomfortable sense that she was silently assessing him as thoroughly as he was assessing her. "You're early," she said, her voice low but pointed, a hint of sarcasm curling at the edges. Adrian blinked. I don't know if that's a complaint or an observation," he muttered, suddenly aware of the absurdity of his situation. He was supposed to oversee security, not engage in negotiations of wit with an alien woman about to be executed. Liara, he remembered the name from the transport manifest, tilted her head, ears flicking slightly. "A little of both, I suppose," she replied. There was a strange comfort in her humor, and it made Adrian realize with some trepidation that he had already started rooting for her. The guards didn't share that sense of subtle irony. They moved forward with mechanical precision, strapping her wrists into restraints that hissed and snapped with finality. "Pregnant and defiant," one of them muttered to another, shaking his head as if this combination of traits were an offense in itself. Adrian's hand twitched toward the controls of the security drone stationed nearby. A small, spherical machine meant to maintain order, but capable of a rather impressive amount of chaos if one knew the right buttons. He glanced at Liara, who gave him a barely perceptible nod, her ears twitching in anticipation. The moment he triggered the drone, sparks flew. It shot forward in a zigzag pattern, smoke pouring from one of its malfunctioning thrusters. The guards cursed and scrambled, slipping on the polished metal floor as Adrian tried to suppress a grin. "Careful," Liara called, "you might actually hit something important." He laughed despite himself, the tension in his chest loosening just a fraction. She had a way of pointing out the absurdity in the most critical moments. When the smoke cleared enough to see her, Liara was already slipping free of the guard's grip, her movements smooth and deliberate, like water flowing around rocks. Adrian bolted after her, half running, half stumbling, and the two of them darted into the twisting corridors of the colony, with the drone sputtering and sparking behind them. "You call that piloting?" she shouted over the hum of energy panels and the distant clang of metal. "I call it dramatic entrance practice," Adrian replied, ducking as a maintenance hatch swung open in his path. She laughed, the sound echoing strangely against the metallic walls, and for a moment it was almost easy to forget that they were fugitives. They reached a junction, and Adrian pressed the wrong button on a panel, sending the lights flickering. "I swear," he muttered, "these things are designed to punish humans." Liara leaned over, her ears brushing against the edge of the panel, and with a few precise touches restored the lights. "See, you don't need brute force. You just need patience or someone who knows what they're doing." She smirked, and Adrian felt his cheeks warm. Humor was dangerous in their situation, but it was also a lifeline, a tether to sanity in the chaos of life-or-death decisions. Eventually, they reached an old maintenance shaft that led down into the underbelly of the colony, a place filled with cargo shuttles long abandoned, their engines cold, their hulls dented and rusted from years of neglect. "Pick one," Liara said, her voice light, almost teasing, as if choosing a hiding spot were a game rather than a desperate bid for survival. Adrian raised an eyebrow. "Really? You're joking now?" She grinned. "Why not? Life's too short to be tense all the time. Besides, if we survive, you'll thank me for keeping the mood up." He shook his head, but the corners of his mouth twitched upward despite himself. She had a point. Humor didn't erase danger, but it made it bearable. Inside the shuttle, Adrian fumbled with the controls while Liara scanned the navigation displays with an ease that made him feel simultaneously incompetent and impressed. Her ears twitched with every fluctuation of the system, picking up signals he couldn't even detect. "Try pressing that button," she said, pointing at a cluster of glowing panels. He hesitated. "I'm not sure that's safe." She rolled her eyes. "Safe is overrated, now press it." He pressed it. Alarms blared, sparks shot from a console. Liara's laughter filled the cabin, and Adrian couldn't help but join in. "I hate you," he said through chuckles. "I know," she replied, grinning, "but you'll survive, and that's what matters." As they prepared to launch, a distant hum vibrated through the hull, the first warning of pursuit. Patrol ships from the colony were converging on their position, their lights glinting like predatory eyes in the void. Adrian glanced at Liara, whose expression was calm, almost serene, as if she had already anticipated this. "You're calm," he said, a hint of admiration in his voice. She shrugged, one hand resting lightly on her stomach. "When you've danced on the edge of regulations and death for as long as I have, you learn to pick your battles. Besides," she added with a teasing tilt of her head, "if I panic, we both die, and I'd rather you live to make bad jokes in space." They launched the shuttle, its engines coughing to life with a groan and a shudder, and Adrian wrestled with the controls while Liara monitored the approaching patrols. They zipped through the twisting corridors of asteroids surrounding Zintra 9, narrowly avoiding collisions that would have ended them both. Every near miss brought a sarcastic quip from Liara and a muttered insult from Adrian, yet the bond between them began to form in the strangest, most human way. Shared laughter amid chaos, the thrill of escape, and a mutual understanding that their fates were now inseparable. Hours later, when the shuttle finally coasted into a shadowed region of space where sensors were unreliable, they both collapsed into the seats, breathing hard but laughing softly at the absurdity of it all. "You know," Adrian said, glancing at her long ears twitching as she adjusted in the seat, "this is the kind of thing I didn't sign up for in the army." Liara's eyes sparkled in the dim light. "And yet," she said, a smirk tugging at her lips, "here you are saving me and my mysterious baby from execution. You're full of surprises, soldier." He shook his head. "I'm full of panic mostly. But okay, yes, I suppose it's a bit heroic too." She laughed, and for the first time in what felt like an eternity, Adrian allowed himself to believe that maybe, just maybe, they had a chance. The universe was vast, chaotic, and more than a little absurd. But it was theirs to navigate together, with humor as their compass, courage as their shield, and the kind of unpredictable bond that only formed when two very different lives collided in the middle of the cosmos. Adrian stared at the console as the shuttle drifted through the void, its engines humming like a nervous animal. Liara sat across from him, her long ears twitching at every faint vibration, eyes half closed as she muttered in her own language, tracing invisible patterns over the navigation panel. "Are you singing to the ship?" he asked, raising an eyebrow. She opened one eye and grinned. "Not singing, communing, the shuttle likes it, you wouldn't understand." He snorted. "I understand machines breaking down at exactly the wrong moment. Is that close enough?" She laughed softly, the sound echoing off the cold metal walls, and Adrian felt the first real flicker of ease since they'd fled the execution chamber. Humor was ridiculous here, absurd even, but necessary, like oxygen in the void. Liara leaned back, her hand brushing lightly over her stomach, and sighed. "You know," she said, "humans have such strange ways of measuring bravery. One second you're making jokes, the next you're throwing your life into danger. It's entertaining." Adrian tilted his head. "I'll take that as a compliment or maybe a threat." She smirked. "A little of both, of course." The shuttle rattled as it passed through a stray meteor field, and Adrian cursed, pulling the controls to avoid a collision that would have left them floating as cosmic debris. Liara shouted over the alarms, "Careful, Earthling. You're supposed to be the pilot, not the decoration?" He laughed, hands steady despite the chaos. She really did have a knack for pointing out the absurdity in every life-or-death moment, and Adrian had to admit, it made the stress bearable. Hours passed in this odd rhythm of near collisions, sarcastic quips, and shared silence. Liara's ears twitched with every pulse of energy the shuttle emitted, giving her a kind of preternatural awareness of the surrounding space. Adrian realized she could detect things he couldn't: approaching ships, small energy fluctuations, hidden gravitational anomalies. "You know," he said, "I should probably just sit back and let you fly this thing." She grinned, adjusting her position so her ears perked toward the controls. "And risk missing all your heroic moments, never." They had drifted into a sparse asteroid belt when Liara's eyes brightened. "We can hide here," she said, pointing at a cluster of tumbling rocks. "Patrol sensors rarely check these areas, too risky for them to waste fuel." Adrian maneuvered the shuttle through the belt, narrowly dodging chunks of rock that threatened to puncture the hull. "I swear these things have it out for us personally," he muttered. Liara laughed, a soft, melodic sound that made his chest tighten slightly. "Either that or the universe has a sense of humor. It likes you." He shot her a look. "Do you mean likes torturing me?" She raised an eyebrow, clearly enjoying the banter. "Both." Once they reached the relative safety of the asteroid shadows, Adrian shut down the main engines, letting the shuttle coast in silence. Liara leaned forward, tracing her fingers over the console, her ears flicking in subtle, precise movements. "We'll be safe here for a little while," she said. "Not forever, but enough to think." Adrian slumped in his chair. Think. "I was hoping more for nap, or, trying to figure out how not to die every 5 minutes." She chuckled. "Surviving is the first step, thinking comes second, but your jokes are comforting, don't stop." They talked then, really talked, about little things at first: the absurdities of interstellar travel, the unreliability of colonial bureaucracy, the insane number of forms required for every trivial procedure. Liara teased him about human customs, asking if he always wore a uniform even when sleeping, and he retaliated with jokes about the impracticality of long ears in zero gravity. She said, her eyes glinting with mischief, "they must have drawn your species without imagination. No ears, no frills, boring." Adrian laughed aloud. "And you, apparently, are royalty, or at least royalty adjacent. Fancy ears and mysterious pregnancies definitely makes paperwork more interesting." The conversation shifted naturally to her situation, and Adrian realized how little he actually knew. Why would anyone even want to execute you?" he asked, genuinely perplexed. Liara sighed, tilting her head so her ears caught the soft hum of the shuttle. "Rules, traditions, fear of the unknown. My child's father is a mystery, yes, but the council sees that as a threat. Nothing more, nothing less. They're terrified of anything they don't understand." Adrian frowned. "So they'd rather kill someone than try to understand." She shrugged, a hint of wry humor in her expression. "It's easier, also more dramatic. Humans would probably call it bureaucracy with style." Despite the lightness of her humor, Adrian felt the weight of responsibility pressing down. Protecting her wasn't just a choice, it was a moral necessity, one he couldn't ignore. "Well," he said finally, with a hint of grim determination hiding behind a smile, "then I guess I'm in. I don't care about the rules. You stay alive, or I swear I'll turn the galaxy into a bureaucratic nightmare for anyone who touches you." She laughed at that, but her smile softened in a way that made Adrian's chest tighten. It wasn't just relief, it was trust. As they drifted further into the asteroid belt, the patrol ships faded from the sensors, though the threat remained. Liara said suddenly, tilting her head toward him, "for someone who's supposedly trained for danger, you seem to panic a lot." Adrian shot her a look. "I'm not panicking, I'm cautiously optimistic." She laughed, flicking a switch on the console that sent the shuttle into a slow spin. "Cautiously optimistic, that's new. Usually humans just scream and hope someone else solves the problem." He groaned as the shuttle spun, then couldn't help but chuckle. "You're impossible." "I know," she said, grinning, "and you love it." Hours turned into a quiet rhythm of survival. Liara's playful teasing, her commentary on the absurdities of interstellar life, and the occasional warning about approaching energy fluctuations became their lifeline. Humor intertwined with tension, creating a strange, fragile equilibrium that allowed Adrian to relax just enough to think, plan, and against all odds enjoy the ride. In a universe that was cold, vast, and utterly indifferent, they had carved out a small pocket of warmth, laughter, and connection. At one point, as Adrian adjusted the shields to deflect the minor impacts from nearby debris, he glanced at Liara. Her long ears twitched as she watched the starfield scroll past the viewport, and for a moment she looked almost serene. "You're good at this," he said quietly. She raised an eyebrow. "At surviving, or at pretending you're in control?" He smiled, shaking his head. "A little of both." Her laugh rang out again, soft and clear, filling the shuttle with life in the middle of the void. And in that moment, amid the spinning rocks, faint hum of energy shields, and the endless black of space, Adrian realized something profound. He didn't just want to protect Liara. He wanted to be part of whatever came next, whatever strange, impossible, and absurdly dangerous adventure the universe had in store for them. Because for the first time, fear was tempered with trust, and the infinite void felt just a little less lonely. The shuttle shuddered as it dodged a tumbling asteroid, and Adrian gritted his teeth, hands gripping the controls like a lifeline. Liara's long ears twitched in time with the shuttle's vibrations, her amber eyes scanning the readings faster than any sensor could. "Careful," she called, though her voice carried a hint of teasing, like she expected him to mess up anyway. "Or I'll have to file a formal complaint with the Galactic Pilots Union." Adrian rolled his eyes. "I don't even think that union exists." She smirked. "It should, you're giving them a reason to form it." The brief laughter between them cut through the tension like sunlight through a storm, and for a moment, the endless void seemed almost manageable. They were close to the outer rim of the asteroid belt when the first patrol ships appeared, sleek, angular, and bristling with weaponry. "Of course," Adrian muttered, "they just couldn't let us have a peaceful ride." Liara leaned over the console, fingers dancing across the interface with the fluidity of someone born to the technology. "Relax, Earthling. You keep the shuttle from exploding, I'll keep them from noticing us. Well, mostly." She glanced at him, a mischievous glint in her eyes. "You do realize that if we survive, this will make one heck of a story, right?" Adrian grinned, feeling a rush of adrenaline and absurdity all at once. "Yeah, I can see the headline. Human soldier and pregnant alien woman outsmart entire galactic security force. Sounds believable." As the patrol ships closed in, Liara's hands flew over the controls, diverting power to the shields and recalibrating the stealth systems. Her ears picked up the faintest signals, small changes in the energy fields around them. "I've got a blind spot over here," Adrian said, pointing to the console. "But if we hit that rock—" A flash of humor crossed her face. "If we hit that rock, we explode spectacularly. Don't worry, I'd laugh first before dying." He shook his head, both terrified and amused. "You're impossible." "Thank you," she said, smirking. "It's a gift." The chase through the asteroid belt became a chaotic dance. Lasers sliced past at impossible angles, shattering rocks and sending showers of debris tumbling around them. Adrian shouted over the alarms. "I think one of them just waved hello." Liara laughed, ducking instinctively. Friendly greetings in space, always appreciated. Her calm under fire, coupled with the occasional joke, kept Adrian steady when panic threatened to overwhelm him. He realized he had changed since that first day in the execution chamber. He no longer reacted purely out of training and instinct. Humor, connection, and trust now guided him as much as any manual or protocol. Eventually, they burst through the asteroid field into a quieter sector of space, where the patrol ship's sensors were less reliable. Liara guided the shuttle into a hidden space station orbiting a dying star, its surface battered and aged but functional. "Home, sweet temporary home," she said, her tone light, though the urgency of their flight still lingered in her posture. Adrian shut down the engines and exhaled, his body tense from hours of constant vigilance. "You make hiding sound cozy," he muttered. She shrugged, a playful smirk on her lips. "It's all about perspective and jokes. Never underestimate the power of jokes." Once inside the station, they moved cautiously through dimly lit corridors, the air thick with the scent of old machinery and recycled oxygen. Liara found a secure room and Adrian helped her settle, adjusting makeshift barriers around the windows. "You know," he said, "I thought my army training prepared me for everything. Turns out it didn't prepare me for sarcasm, ear sensitivity, or space motherhood." She laughed, the sound echoing off the walls. "I'd call that evolution, soldier. You're growing, slowly, but you're improving." Adrian raised an eyebrow. "I'll take it." Over the next few days, they repaired and upgraded the shuttle, using scavenged parts from the station. Liara guided Adrian through the alien systems, teaching him nuances he would have laughed at before, like tuning the navigation matrix to respond to subtle hums in the spacetime continuum or modulating shield harmonics with hand gestures. Humor remained a constant companion. When Adrian accidentally triggered an alarm that sent a small turret spinning toward them, Liara quipped, "Congratulations, you just reactivated the station's self-defense system." Heroic as always. He groaned but couldn't hide his smile. As the weeks passed, they shared stories and banter, and Adrian realized how deeply his respect and affection for Liara had grown. She was not only resourceful and intelligent but fiercely alive, defying the absurdities of her world with humor and courage. She, in turn, seemed to find comfort in his stubborn determination, his willingness to face the impossible with both courage and clumsy charm. Every joke, every shared glance, every narrow escape strengthened the bond between them, transforming fear into trust and trust into something heavier, something intimate. One evening, as they watched the dying star cast a muted glow across the station's viewport, Liara rested a hand lightly on her belly. "Do you ever think about what the universe wants?" she asked quietly. Adrian tilted his head. "All the time, but lately I think it just wants us to survive and laugh while doing it." She smiled, and the corners of her eyes crinkled with warmth. "Then we're doing it right together." Eventually, the patrol ships stopped coming. Reports of a rogue shuttle in the asteroid belt turned into rumors, and the galaxy's bureaucrats found it easier to assume she was gone than to investigate. Adrian and Liara emerged cautiously, testing their shuttle and skills against the still unpredictable void. The danger had not vanished entirely, but the fear that had once dominated every moment had given way to confidence tempered with humor, skill, and partnership. Adrian realized how much he had changed. He was no longer just a soldier following orders. He was a protector, a partner, someone capable of balancing life-or-death decisions with levity and humanity. Liara had taught him that courage was not only in facing danger but in laughing through it, in seeing absurdity without surrendering to it, and in trusting another being enough to let them guide you when your own instincts faltered. As the shuttle glided through open space, Liara rested her head lightly against his shoulder, her long ears brushing against his arm. "Do you ever think about how absurd our story is?" she asked softly. Adrian laughed. "Every day. And every day I'm glad we get to keep telling it." She smiled, eyes glowing faintly in the control panel's light. "Then let's keep going. The universe is big and apparently it likes to test us."